Hello there. Welcome to this epilogue of the Strife and Grimbone walkthrough, a series of videos where we create a module in Foundry VTT for the Pathfinder 2nd Edition system. So up to this point we had finished our module and lots of self-congratulations by me and patting on my back. But what are we going to do now? We need actually to play the game. And so now I'm going to talk about how we save backups of the module and how we put it up so that players can join us and play the game. So what we would want to do first is to create a final backup of the module. We would go to the compendium packs I should say, and our Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module. So if you recall, towards the beginning of this series, I, at a very early stage, decided to create a module of the world. So the world is the active process of creating the adventure, running the adventure. The module is essentially a storage version of that. And we would create a module if we recap if we log out for a moment. Go into our setup, add on modules, and this is how we would create a module. And we would enter the name, Strife and Grimbone walkthrough. The package identifier is the unique version of that. We would choose a version of our game. We would see what versions of Foundry we're running. We may or may not want to add authors, depending on how egotistical we are, but what we definitely need to do is add a compendium pack, and we would be wanting to add an adventure compendium to the module. By changing it to an adventure, there would be a required system of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. That's the only one I've got loaded on because I'm a true loyal Pathfinder 2nd Edition player, and we would create a module that way. So that would be a compendium pack module. We will go back into our game worlds, join as the game master, and wait patiently for it to download, which is not bad considering how big our adventure is. And we would go to game settings, manage modules, and we would have the Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module. We would select that and save the settings, and only then would the compendium packs show the Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module. And we would we would first right click this and make sure that the editing lock was off, and then we could left click it, and then we would create an adventure. So this is creating an adventure within our module, and then we build up the adventure. And what we're doing now is just updating. So rather than creating an adventure, we will if we left click that is for importing an adventure to start a new world. We don't want to do that. We want to right click it and rebuild the adventure. And this is our summary, which we've already done before with our introduction. And in our contents, this is where we drag all the world assets, including the macros, into here. You can see we've got quite a lot. It should be complete really, but for the sake of instruction, we would download all our scenes. Anything new will show up as green. So actors, items, journal entries, scenes, and we shouldn't expect any more because Sunken City was the last one, and that's all unchanged. And then we'd go to the next column, actors, we would need to download the party, unless we like the tokens, we could use those, or that would work for linking them. Anyway, in any event, we would download the creatures, the hazards, the loot, the placed items, and then we would download the items, the journal entries. We had rollable tables for random encounters, we would do those as well. You can just drag the parent folder and all the subfolders and items come across. We didn't have any cards, we didn't have any playlists either. And then once we'd done that, we would, and we were happy, we would build the adventure. And the adventure was successfully updated. So now we've got our updated module there. And what does this give us? I'll show you the modules. So we go to our, so this is my folder here, the Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module, which we just updated a second ago. It contains packs, and it's the Strife and Grimbone pack, and this is the adventure that we just created in that on that column there when it was there. And inside the pack doesn't look very much, does it? There's 4,000 kilobytes in a log. I think that's the 576 update of it, and that's either an error log or it could be the chat log. The LDB is the database, and don't be concerned if it's just a megabyte in size. That contains all the world assets. So it's highly compressed into a database. LDB stands for level database, and level means that it was a new version as of version 11 of Foundry VTT, where the database was updated to include subfolders. Don't ask me any more details because I don't know, but if we tried to look at that in Notebook, it's all gobbledygook. You'd need to have a specialized viewer to be able to see the contents, but this would contain all the data for the scenes, not the images themselves, but it would contain the walls information, if there were tokens placed there, that information, the attached sounds and things, not the sounds or things themselves, but the locations and their data. The database would contain the actors' information, the character sheets, which the links to their images, but not the images themselves. And similarly for items, it would contain all the journal entries and the links to images, but not the images themselves. And the same for rollable tables, and not forgetting the same for macros as well, which in version 12, for some reason, that's known to the developers are down there, but I think in version 13, macros are going to belong up here. So all that is packed into 1 megabyte. We'll go back to packs, back to the module. So there's a module JSON file, and there's a copy there which I'll talk about at the very end, but it contains the main attributes of the module, like the author and its name, that sort of thing. And then there's this folder called assets, which we would have, first time we would create the module, we would have had to add that in ourselves. And ourselves, we would have to create these subfolders. And this is where we put the assets that aren't stored as part of the world, the images, sound files, and video files if you have them. Obviously I've subdivided them according to what the role are, but mostly it's images and sounds. So those are stored separately from the world data, but the module contains the assets in terms of the images and sounds, etc., as well as the world assets, which includes the wall data for scenes, but not the images themselves, the actor data, the character sheets, all those data, the journal data. So that's what the module is. I've explained what parts of the module are world data or what parts of the module are assets data. And we have just updated it. So what do we do next? Well, this is a nice package that we can use to run the game. Now, what we could do is just run the game in Foundry VTT. We would go to game settings, and I'm not going to click it because it's quite revealing, but if we clicked invitation links, it would give us a link if we wanted to host it on a local network, and it would give a link to the local network so other people could just go into their browser like Google and paste in the invitation, and through the local network they could play the game and join as players. Or the invitation link would contain an internet connection, and so there would be a URL for an internet link, and this would be presuming that one had gone into the settings. So we'll log out of here again, go to the setup, and in the settings here we would set the port, and we would decide if we would enable universal plug and play. If we're hosting on Amazon Web Services, there's some more details there if you didn't want to direct host it. But you can direct host from Foundry VTT using this system. I'm not going to go into any more detail because I don't use this system. We'll log into the, go back into the game world again. The disadvantage of using Foundry VTT is that you're relying on all the players having access to your local computer, which you may or may not want. Also, the connection might be a bit slow. So what many people do, including me, is to host the game on a specialist dedicated server, and there are a number of them. The one I choose is the Forge. So I'll show you how we do that. So first thing we ought to do is to close our instance of Foundry, because we don't want to be having Foundry open while we're taking the module data and taking it from Foundry to the Forge in case it causes some corruption. So we're going to quit Foundry, and here's the Forge where I'm logged in, and these are my existing games. And if you've got a screen like that, we want to get the summon import wizard. So if we can't find that, don't click on my games or games configuration, just click on Man Foundry itself, and then it'll show you all these options. And what one we want is summon import wizard. We have a choice to import a zip file or from a local folder, and we're going to choose local folder. And I think I might shut the game down just for a moment in case it reveals all my directory tree. So I'm still here, and I'm going into my directory where I've got the modules. So normally it would be within Windows, and it would be in the users, and you choose your user, then you go into app data. This would be the default one, local, Foundry VTT, data, modules, and then it would be the Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module. And then it says, this will upload all the files from Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module if you trust the site. So I can bring it back on for you. Hello again, we'll press upload. And it says, reminds you to shut down the local Foundry first, which we'd remember to do. First it'll analyze it. And it's the Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module. One is the compendium module, that's what we want. We'll import it. and it might seem as if it's not doing anything for a while, but what it does is it seems to upload in blocks. So don't worry if it's a 0 and 0 for some time. Suddenly it'll jump to a percentage like 5% or something. So we'll wait for that. If this takes too long, I'll pause the video. So what's happening here is it's in a neat package, uploading onto the Forge not only the world data but all the assets, like the images of the scenes and custom images and the token images, all that sort of thing. And once we've done that, the images will go into the assets section of our Forge, and the world will go into the world section of it as all automatic. So I'm not sure if I should carry on talking or advance or pause the video. I think what I'm going to do is to pause it. Welcome back. We've finished. It took about 5 minutes, which I don't think is too bad, because if you stuck around for all those videos, you will have seen exactly how much content got added in. A lot more than Pathfinder 2nd Edition Adventure Path chapter, I would suggest. So here we are. We've imported the module. Obviously the game people haven't, the programmers haven't got around that imported one modules, the singular and the plural. You can see that I've got 3 things in there, and I'm nowhere near capacity despite the size of what I just imported, and we're done now. So what we need to do is to create a world. We'll just assume that the module is in. We could probably check by looking at our assets library. We'll just assume it's in there. So what we need to do is create a new world. So just in the same way that we had a module and we might create a new world and attach the module to the world, we're going to do the same in the Forge. So we don't see easily here, but the plus is to create a new game. And if we're in the game manager, we see the plus there. So we go there, and here we are. So we need, this is selecting the system, so the only one I got installed is Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We select that, scroll down to the bottom, nothing else interesting down here. That's all. In fact, why don't we just not show uninstall things? All we got is Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but we need to set a world name. And we can call it test, a test version. If you're running different games for different groups, just give them different world names, and then you can run the same module in different worlds with different groups, and all its different stages of the same game. Or you can archive one game, and then if you're playing it to another group later, give it a new world name. The folder has to be a unique name, but that's automatically generated from what we generated there. Usually it's in that sort of URL friendly case of hyphens with no spaces or special characters. So that's all we need to do. Okay. And this is our new game. These are the previous ones I got. Sneaky clues as to the names of the other chapters in the adventure path. Some of them anyway. So Strife and Grimbone walkthrough test. We've got the game URL. This will be things we'll look at later. We probably want to add in a game description, and we can do it later. If we wanted to do that, we could open up Foundry again. And make it the right size for the video, and then we just going to set up and Strife and Grimbone walkthrough. We'll edit the world, and here's our description. So that's a description for our local version of Strife and Grimbone walkthrough, what we might call our development version, and we'll just paste that into our Forge version. Blah blah blah, that didn't work. Obviously I did Control S instead of Control C. Control C. There we are. Later on we can change the game picture once we are familiar with the image assets that the module contains. Our default version is the latest version of Foundry VTT. Obviously we're waiting a little bit of time to update to version 13. You can do things like schedule your next game session. So we'll save the changes. Oh, didn't work. Let's try again. Save the changes. That's better. And now we can launch the game. That's the default banner, but as I said, we can change that. And this is just the standard chat for Foundry as opposed to Forge. We can just neaten that up. And that's the default landing page. So we got this empty world. We have called it Strife and Grimbone walkthrough test, but there's nothing else that says it's got anything to do with our Strife and Grimbone module. We need to attach the module. So we go into game settings, manage modules, scroll down. So these are the ones that are already been uploaded to the Forge. See, you can see from the we're in a browser. We're not in Foundry VTT. That's Foundry VTT. That's did you see that? No. Let me. Sorry. This is the Forge, and that's the Foundry VTT. So we can see it's the Forge because we've got the URL there. These are the ones that are uploaded onto the Forge. We've got Strife, that was a test I did earlier. Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module is our one. And you want to save that. It reloads the world. Looks the same, and we have this landing page, but now we've got a lot more. Our scenes are empty, as are the actors, so nothing's changed apart from one important thing. In the compendium packs, we now have affiliated the Strife and Grimbone pack. This is the pack that was wrapped up in that module that we just associated with the world. So we right click on this, make sure the edit lock is off. For some reason it gives us a warning, but that's fine. Now when we left click it, we see this. And remember, before we right clicked on that, if we wanted to rebuild an adventure, well, we left click this time. Now after a little pause, we can import the adventure. And this is importing all the assets that were wrapped up in the Strife and Grimbone pack within the Strife and Grimbone module that we affiliated to the world. The 133 actors, the 32 scenes, the 63 journal entries, this is going to import it all in. And whenever you're creating a new world, either in Foundry VTT or in the Forge, this is always what you do. It could even be a premium module. You would have the module and you would first have to affiliate the module to the world, you'd activate the module, and then you look in the compendium packs. So this happens sometimes, that's just a brief thing, maybe for a second it can disconnect itself. So we've got the pack there, we've imported the module. What's happened now? Well, now we go into the scenes, as well as our default one, we've got all our scenes. And look, oh, it's blank. We just got the names. Don't panic, it's not the end of the world, either the Strife and Grimbone world that you just created or the real world. We've not lost our scenes. All we just lost is the thumbnails. The thumbnails don't seem to come across. So we go into our first area, Pandaka Dock, and activate that. We've got the scene that we created oh so long ago when we were first starting the walkthrough. We've even got some of the characters there which shouldn't really be there. And if you wanted to, we can just right click this and generate a thumbnail image, and we get a thumbnail back. So not only the scenes, we've got all our actor data with all the images of the avatars affiliated. So this is the assets that would be in the assets token subfolder in our module. It's been correctly linked to the world data, which is the character sheets or the NPC character sheets themselves. So one thing to note about the Forge, which is different from Foundry VTT, say we take this thing here, the electric eel, our very first monster, and we double click that, and we were deliriously happy that the avatar is linked, and as we see the token is linked. But if we look at the link, is modules, Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module, assets tokens. That's the link that we created when we were doing the local version. But that's within the Forge assets. The link is different. What the Forge has done is created a new version of the this image inside the Forge. We're not linking to our local computer anymore, even though this path is the same. If we go into user data and go into modules, actually if we go into the root there, well, it's hard to show, but what is actually, here we are, what it actually is linking to, is to this URL here, assets, the Forge, big number, then modules, Strife and Grimbone walkthrough. So what's happened is it's copied the image to a cloud version in the Forge, and the advantage of this is obviously is not only is the world data in a cloud version for the players to access, players' computers to access quickly, all the assets data is there's be little point in having a dedicated server if you still had to if the players still had to download all the images onto their computers. You lose all the speed advantages. The disadvantage of this is if you want to tinker with the Forge version of the module, say between games, you think, well, I want to change this, I wanted to have another encounter monster, and I wanted to do this. You can't just change the version in the Forge and expect your blueprint, your module, automatically to change at the same time, because the links are now to the Forge version. So what other useful things can we do? Well, one useful thing we can do is to save our version of the world. Say we were worried that the Forge might get corrupted and we wanted to save a snapshot of the world on a local thing in case of problems. The best way to do this is to go back to the Forge and export the world. And if we do this, it will export the world as a zip file, and that would be a snapshot. And if, for example, in our world that electric eel had been wounded or was in a different position, if we re-imported that snapshot, everything would be in that new version. So we would then say we wanted to open the world in our... So first of all, say we just wanted to create a backup somewhere, and then we wanted to get the world back again. What we would have to do is to delete the original version of the world, and then you would just summon an import wizard, and instead of importing from the local folder, you would import from the zip file, upload from that zip file, and then your world would be exactly the same snapshot as it had been when you'd saved it. Obviously, anything that you might have changed in the world since you created that snapshot, that would be lost when you update it in that way. You might think about creating a shared compendium, which is the Forge equivalent of that process where we create a module in Foundry VTT, but I think the simpler way to do it is just to export and re-import the world. Say we wanted to make changes to our module, I think the best way to do it is to go back to the Foundry VTT and make the changes there and update the module. So that's updating our blueprint. So anything else we wanted to say about all this business? Oh yeah, so the asset sync was a function that the Forge introduced so that when you were creating changes in the Forge, we'll launch the game, there would be backups onto your local computer. But when I tried this, I couldn't really see how it would back up the links. So it's not really achieving the purpose of updating your blueprint of the module, because I think the links would still be broken. All it would be achieving is creating backups of any new assets that you'd created onto your local computer. Again, as I was suggesting, the best way to make changes to your module is to go back into the original local version and change that. If you forget to do that and you make, for example, lots of journal entries, the new version of the world, if you'd saved that, would contain all the new journal entries, and then you could update the module, but you might need to be updating all the URLs for attaching the images to the actors, etc. That might be, but if you'd created a lot of work in the journal and forgotten to update your original version of the module, that might be less work to reproduce all that than to reattach the images. Sorry, more work to reproduce it than to reattach the images. Other thing to say is when you've saved a zip version, and if you wanted to look at it in Foundry VTT, so we'll go to our Foundry VTT, and we would unzip the world in our worlds folder. So if we have here bring it up so you can see it. So we went up to modules, we would unzip the world that we had exported from the Forge into our local worlds folder, and then it would appear as a game world, and if we opened it up, you might get a nasty shock that you can't log in because there's no password. What happens is if we do it here and we wanted to join the game session, instead of Game Master, the Forge defaults to your username instead of Game Master, and so you would have username and then there'd be no password, and then you would panic and the world has gone awry again. But the way around that is to go back to the setup and then go to edit world, and then where it says reset user passwords, check that button, update the world, and then there'd be a blank password, and then you can just click on your username and it would be okay. So I think that's all I wanted to say about uploading, downloading, that sort of thing. What I want to do now is to just a second, is to talk about inviting players. So that's our Foundry version. Here's our Forge version, and if you go into game settings, we would have invitation links, and what you would do is give that invitation, not the game URL, you would give the invitation link to the players, and the players would then paste that into their internet browser, and what that would do would be an invitation to join. So they would either sign up or sign into the Forge. That would be free for them as players, and they would have their username and a password. They'd be invited to join, they'd accept the invitation, and then they would get into their version of the Forge here, like that. And they would accept the invitation to join. You might see here they would have the option to launch the game, and then they would get a window, and they would first join. If we right click on there, user configuration, when they first joined, they'd get a window that looked like that, and they wouldn't be able to change much. They could change their colour, and their avatar would be able to be changed later, and they would probably not be able to do anything there, and they would save their configuration, and they'd be in the game, and if they clicked on actors, they might be able to see party members if there were any, but they wouldn't be able to do much else. And then it's up to the GM to start doing some things. First of all, the GM could have pre-generated characters, so that we would do that most conveniently. Again, we're in the Forge, but all the assets that belong to Pathfinder 2nd Edition are already uploaded when you upload that system for the Forge. So there would be pre-generated PCs, and we go to Iconics, and we could choose them, and we say they wanted to play Emiri. Click on her, we'd import her, just as we've done 1,000 times when we're modifying compendium monsters and putting them in locally. We'd have Emiri, we'd put her in there, and now the player would see Emiri come up under the party in actors. They wouldn't see any of these, but they would see what was in the party, and they would click on Emiri, but all they would get is that. I think they'd get a sort of appearance. They get a sort of thing that just says appearance and nothing else. They're an observer. they can't control that character. Again, it's for the GM to set the character to be controlled. So the GM would go to the pre-generated character, right-click it, and do configure ownership. And then, as well as all players limited, if another player was in the forge with the GM, that player's name would be there, and you would click it, and you would change their configuration from observer to owner, save the changes, and now when the player would click this, they would be able to access everything. And then what the GM would do is they would make sure the scene was activated, or probably what they do is go into there would be a kind of landing page, and our landing page is, in fact, it's probably easiest to go here, chapter 1, Pendark of the Varisia map. And this is, say, what Seal is like already in there. This is the landing page that we created earlier, and this was set. This was configured to all players rather than GM only, and that means that the players would be able to see this whole scene. But they wouldn't be able to drag their token in. It would still require the GM to drag their token in. And once the GM had done that, only then would they be able to click on the token to access the character sheet, as well as just clicking there, and they can move their token around. This is a non-grid landing page scene. And then you could start playing the game. If the players wanted new characters rather than pre-generated characters, delete that one, they couldn't do it themselves. The GM, and not the players, have this create new member button, and they could leave the name blank and then create a new actor, which would be a totally blank actor. And then they would right click it, configure ownership. Again, we would have the player's username, and you would set that to owner. And that would mean that the player could do all this business of setting up a character. They would go into their ancestry and click the confirm selection to make them a dwarf, choosing a clan dagger, not a clan pistol obviously, and then they would be selecting a background and a heritage and a class. And there's lots of deities, aren't there? And then they would be carrying on like that. All sorts of different things to select there. So that would be how the players would create and use a pre-generated character or their own character. They'd be able to change the name here. They wouldn't be able to change the image. That would be up to the GM. So the GM would have to upload the image onto the forge that they could use, or the GM could somehow, or they wouldn't necessarily need to go into the actual module. If the GM had other modules and they wanted to pass them across, they could just do so from the versions of them on the forge. So I think that's covered everything from inviting players. Once the player has been invited, as you can, if you go into Game Manager, you can see that here we've got players 1, that's the GM, but my friends in my other games, you can see them there, just there. Once they're invited, they don't need to accept or invitations all the time. You can just give them the direct URL and they can go straight onto this screen. So you're essentially giving them this here. So when they're doing invitation links, once they're already invited, they join the game. The next and subsequent sessions, if they forget, you can just give them the game URL and save that, or share that, I should say, and then they can use that and jump straight into the game without having to be re-invited. And once they're in there, they can have their player character that they're owned with affiliated, so that they're automatically linked to the player character. They can change their player color. They can also change some background settings. So, for example, many players just want to click a button and roll the dice. They don't want that screen coming up saying, do you want to add conditional modifiers, that sort of thing. So you uncheck that button, you go straight to rolling the dice. But then if you press shift and click the dice roll button, only then does that screen come up. And the same for attacks and damage. So that's all I wanted to mention about running the game. I hope you enjoy doing so when you run similar games. One final thing I wanted to mention very briefly. If we go from worlds to modules, this is the module JSON file. And you can see that. I'll show you the reminder here. So here I've got to the Strife and Grimbone walkthrough module. I'd mentioned the assets and the packs. There's a module JSON file, and this looks something like this. If you want to distribute a module, for example, onto the Forge Bazaar or elsewhere, you need to set download links and a manifest URL. And the way that you would do that, very briefly, and there's more detail available on the internet, is you would add a line here, download, so in this version, which I like my copy version, you would add a line download, and then if you were hosting it on Dropbox, you would have the Dropbox, and then it would be this special link, and then you'd have DL for download. You change that from 0 to 1, and that would be the link there. And then you would have another line, manifest, and so this would link to the zip file. You would create a zip file of your module, and that would be the Dropbox link to your zip file. And then you would have a Dropbox link to this module file, and the module JSON, you can leave that as download equals 0, and that would be a way that a convenient way to distribute the module, so that users would then see the manifest and be able to click it to get the link to download your module and play it. And so that completes what I wanted to talk about. I hope that was useful, and there might be another epilogue when I update to version 13 eventually and see what changes we ought to make to the adventure to take into account the updates from there. So thanks very much for your attention, and happy module creating, and now I've eventually shown you how to run it and have the players join. Happy adventuring. Bye.